visitation rights, for example. And I just think that, especially in the area of gay marriage, that the government just needs to get out of the marriage business altogether. And marriage is basically a contract between two people, and that's I would work to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I would also work to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act of 1996. Thank you.
Ms. Emerson?
I am not in favor of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Right now, the Department of Defense is carrying out a survey among all branches of the military, among soldiers across the board, and it's due to complete that at the end of December, at which time it's going to be reviewed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and at some point in time, it may then come to the Congress. I'm not certain about that, because the President can, in fact, do this on his own. And so my position is very simple, that number one, we wait for the Commission's findings to determine what it is that our men and women in uniform want across all branches of the military.
Mr. Bill?
Like I said before, I served 22 years total time in the Air Force. And I'm sure during that time, I worked with people that were gay, did not know it probably, and really it never was an issue for me. So if it would come down to where the commanders in the field determined that it would not be an issue, that is not something I would advocate for continuing. We have to look at all persons in our society are entitled to equal justice under the law. And even though I'm a conservative, I still hold that opinion. And I'll hold that opinion even though it may differ with some of the people that would like to agree with me. So as far as I'm concerned on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, once the decision was made by the commanders that they would like to repeal it, or they think it's appropriate to repeal it, then I would not fight that in any way. Thank you.
Mr. Sowers?
Well, this is an issue I agree with Vice President Cheney, Colin Powell, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, in that Don't Ask, Don't Tell should be repealed. It is an insult to the professionalism of the military. The exact same arguments that are being used right now are the same arguments that were used in the 40s to keep forces from being integrated of black and white forces. They're the same arguments that were used that would have kept women out of the service academies. They are erroneous. But worse than that, what Congresswoman Emerson just said is something that, you know, I taught the Constitution to students and cadets, and I feel like I'm going to have to teach the Constitution to Congress when I get there. Article 1, Section 8, says the Congress sets the rules and regulations for the land and naval forces. You don't wait for the executive to figure it out. And when I hear these things that we're just going to wait and let the executive figure it out, it's the same thing with environmental regulations, it's the same thing with military policy. We need strong members of Congress, and right now we've got our fewest number of veterans in Congress since World War II. So electing me up there, you'll have somebody that is battle-tested, who has been on the ground and can call this policy what it is. I do want to address a few things. Where I got my data and how we've slipped from the 12th to the 10th to the 8th Corps, that was the U.S. Census Bureau. So I'm not familiar with the study that you used, Congresswoman Emerson. It was probably the same one that, going back to your opening statement where you said that we've eradicated meth in the Mark Twain National Forest. I've spent time out with sheriffs out on the road in Reynolds County, and I've seen meth being produced. It is an epidemic, and it's something that I'm going to address no matter what any study says, because I'm going to listen to the people here and listen to law enforcement. Thank you.
The first response to question number 3 will come from Ms. Emerson. Do free trade agreements hurt the creation of American manufacturing jobs?
Oh, is it just one part?
Yes.
There is no doubt that free trade agreements have increased agricultural trade, and our congressional district happens to be very heavily agricultural. And the fact is that we have been able to increase agricultural exports by about 66%, both in beef and in soybeans. And that has definitely been positive. I would say also that, you know, you're going to hear from Mr. Sowers that we have lost 140 factories and 16,000 jobs due to free trade agreements. Those numbers are questionable, I might say, but let me also say that we have created thousands and thousands of jobs in our congressional district, and all of the opponents of free trade only use, of course, the tired old rhetoric of you know, free trade causes job loss. There is job displacement, and losing one job is one job too many. But nobody talks about the wonderful jobs that we've brought back, Tony Manufacturing has brought back in St. James, jobs that they had once sent over to Taiwan that they decided they could better do here because of more efficient production capabilities. And so most of that business is coming back to the United States. We don't talk about the Walmart distribution center in St. James that has created hundreds and hundreds of jobs and others. It's it's a complicated issue, but at the end of the day, we have a great workforce who wants us to invest in their future. And I think it's very important to dismiss the rhetoric and also talk about the positive growth that we have had in our congressional district. And I might add that the U.S. Census, you cannot compare the median income in Missouri to Manhattan.
Mr. Bill.
I think we need to have free trade with the world. I think we need to have fair trade with the world. If our EPA puts restrictions, or our government actually puts restrictions on our manufacturers for emissions, then those restrictions need to either be met by the people we import from, or else we can put an import tax on them. Because that's what we want to do, is we want to keep the playing field level. Free trade agreements are often blamed for job loss, and that is the case. I won't argue that. But there are other reasons for it as well. Computerization, automation, more efficient management structures, but probably another big contributor, which we could actually work on here back in the United States, is to reduce the impact of regulators on people that employ people. Right now, if you're in the window business, the EPA has come up with a new regulation to where you have to go through very specific training and very specific procedures to get a window out of a house because of possibility of lead-based paint. Now, I don't want lead-based paint to impact anybody, but we've been pulling windows out of houses for 100 years now, and I can't cite a specific circumstances it came down to. So what's going to happen is the price of installing one window is going to go up by $50 because of this training. And the other side of the coin is they can't enforce all the laws still, and the people that cheat are going to be able to low bid on those kind of things. And that's the impact of our own government on our own employment. Thank you.
Mr. Sowers.
Well, there's no question that we've lost jobs in the last 14 years. The unemployment rate in 1996 was 5.6%. Now it's almost double that at 9.8%. And I am for fair trade, but not the 12 of 13 free trade agreements that Congresswoman Emerson has signed. Look, our farmers, our industries can compete as long as we have a level playing field on which to compete. And the negotiations of these trade agreements have not been stringent enough, have not been hard enough. With me up there, you're going to fight to make sure that we renegotiate these trade agreements so that we can start making things here in America again. It's important that we make things here. Now, I worked at Tacony for an afternoon, manufacturing vacuum cleaners, and the amount of pride that people took in that they're actually making something is huge. I was in Eminence, and I worked making aluminum aircraft parts that go into helicopters. And after about 2 hours of scraping aluminum burrs off of an aircraft part, I looked to the woman who was doing it with me, and I asked her, "Do you like this?" She said, "I love it. I'm making something." and we don't make that much around here anymore. But their number one competitor for that aircraft manufacturer is a Polish manufacturer, a Polish shop that our own tax dollars help subsidize and create. We need to start having folks that focus on America first. And then we also have to start investing to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place in order to compete in a 21st century infrastructure. The fact that our cell and broadband network is worse than what I had in Baghdad is unacceptable and puts us behind the power curve. With me, you'll have someone that fights for our jobs here.
Mr. Van Dieven.
Well, all free trade is the right for every citizen from every country to trade with any citizen of any country. And we don't need free trade agreements or favored nation statuses to engage in free trade. Free trade agreements result in protectionism for a country's favored industry or moneyed interest. NAFTA, for example, has prevented the import of corn from Mexico. Free trade increases the quality of life for both parties involved, or else there would be no trade. I would not support free trade agreements or favored nation statuses. I would also work to eliminate some of the over 8,000 federal tariffs that are on imports. I believe in free trade with all nations and alliance with none. If goods don't cross borders, armies will. And proof of that is the fact that war is this country's biggest export.
Thank you. The first response to question number 4 will come from Mr. Bill. Will you work to restore need-based federal financial aid for students in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the so-called STEM fields? If yes, how? If not, why not?
I think that you need to have a stake in the game. And in order to, if you're a stakeholder, you need to have a stake in the game. And in order to get a loan or something like that, you need to show that you'll be involved in it on the end. Thank you.
Mr. Sowers.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Will you work to restore need-based federal financial aid for students in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the so-called STEM fields? If yes, how? If not, why not?
Well, I look at investments in science and math and those STEM fields that are so critical for S&T as simply investments in our future. Right now, we are graduating, I believe it's 1/5 of the graduates in engineering as India is graduating every year. We have to put the right sort of programs in place that really invest in our own, and education is a prime example of that. So in terms of restoring funding for that, absolutely. Now, how do you do it? Now, there's lots of good ideas out there, but you've got to cut in some areas. And an area that I know quite a bit about is in the military. It's one of the reasons why I want to end these wars overseas. Right now, we're spending $2 billion a week in Afghanistan, $400 charged to for every gallon of gas that is put in a Humvee in Kabul. Imagine what we could do if we invested here in America with those dollars. The infrastructure, the amount that we could pay down the debt, and the amount that we could invest in things like science, math, and education.
Thank you. Mr. Van Dieven.
No, I would not support increasing federal education funding in any area. I'm pretty much a strict constitutionalist when it comes to things like this, and I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where it says that it's the role of government to provide education. That's my answer. Thanks.
Ms. Emerson.
I think the fact that we don't have as many young people interested in math and the sciences is a little bit troubling, although I must say that the program that, the mentoring program that some of the engineering students here at MS&T have when they've gone out into the surrounding communities to get kids excited about math and science is very, very helpful.